folks. This is Mr. MegaManFan. Like, share, comment, subscribe. You know all the things to do. Today on Genesis Does, we are looking at Water Margin, A Tale of Clouds and Wind. This is not a game licensed or produced by Sega. In fact, it didn't even come out in the original era of the Sega Genesis in North America. This is a overseas game, Mega Drive game, and it has been ported to North America, localized for North America, and licensed and released in North America by Piko Interactive. Now, your opinion of Piko Interactive may vary depending on what you think of their products, their licensing. I've had interesting experiences with some of their games. I mean, they make affordable versions of games that are otherwise infamously expensive, but also they're infamous for bad reasons. The games aren't good, like Super 3D Noah's Ark or Supernova 3D's Ark, whichever one you choose to call it. So, just the fact that they had a physical release of a game that was never released in North America intrigued me enough to pick this up. And since it's not an official Sega Genesis game, they've changed some of the branding on it and noted that it's not licensed by Sega, but it should work in typical modern day clone systems. I would assume, unless they're like only designed to work with already known Genesis ROMs, but you definitely shouldn't have a problem with an FPGA system, something like the Analog Mega SG, which is what I'm going to try this on today. As you can see, it does come with a full color manual in English, although you can probably get some idea from the names that this was not originally a North American game. And there are the instructions for how to play: attack button, jump button, and a magic button. So it kind of looks like a side-scrolling brawler game, but there might be some RPG-ish elements to it. We've got barrels that you can break for chicken, meat buns, and treasure. Yes, I'm very much getting the Asian influence here of Water Margin. I suspect this might have been a Chinese territory exclusive, but without looking at the Piko Interactive website, I can't say for sure. Maybe I'll just put that in the description below if that applies, but let's put this in the old Analog Mega SG and see what happens. And as you can see, this game boots up just fine in an Analog Mega SG, which to me means it should also work in a Sega Genesis Model 1 or 2, probably a 3, and maybe some of the other clone systems, but don't hold me to that. You'd have to ask Piko Interactive to be sure. Speaking of which, I did want to look up some more information about the game, so that's what I'm doing right now as you're watching my gameplay footage. It is a rather standard belt action side-scrolling beat-em-up type game, so nothing too out of the ordinary, although I do feel like they picked a good one to localize because I don't really notice any issues with the gameplay. The hitboxes seem to be accurate. There's no flickering of the sprites. The action is good, but not overwhelming. There's a lot of enemies on the screen, but never really more than you can handle. And I didn't even start using the magic abilities until the second level because I felt like I could handle it as it was without doing that. So let's take a look at what the information is about Water Margin. Initial release date 1999. Developers Never Ending Soft Team, King Tech Information Company Limited. So they're the ones that originally put it out. I found this article on Retro Megabit, and let's see what they wrote about it. It is a game, an unlicensed game released exclusively in Asian regions in 1996. Piko Interactive translated this one into English, and they're selling it for $55 plus shipping. That's complete with cartridge case and manual, which you saw in my introduction to the video. I guess I could have gotten it as a loose cart for just $40, but I'm actually happy I got it as a complete inbox game because it looks like an original era Sega Genesis game with that clamshell. And there have been some other homebrew Sega Genesis games that haven't quite looked like they belong in a Sega Genesis collection. I'd rather have something that fits in with the same box style, or even if you wanted to go to the cheap Sega Genesis cardboard boxes they started using in the mid-90s, that would be okay too, but if it doesn't match either one of those, it doesn't really feel like a Sega Genesis game to me. Then again, if it's a loose cartridge, I've got loose cartridges, so it would sit fine right next to those, but it would also lose some distinctiveness if you're going to buy a later release Sega Genesis game. You want something that's not just going to go in a pile of cartridges where you might forget that you even bought a special post-Genesis era game, either a homebrew game or a licensed re-released game or whatever the case. You don't just want it in a pile with columns and Sonic Spinball and whatever else might be in your pile of loose games. So, kind of got sidetracked there. Anyway, I would say this is a decent game. Now, decent $55 worth? I suppose you'll have to be the judge of that from this gameplay footage, because there are plenty of side-scrolling belt action beat-em-up brawler games on 16-bit consoles, and this one, while perfectly competent, I'd even say borderline above average, it's certainly not going to top any of the best well-known games of the era. This is not like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game, or any of the ports of that, or Streets of Rage. Keep it on the Sega Genesis in this case. You know, this is not going to be better than those, but it does what it does well enough. I have a feeling, though, that a lot of people will say, since it was an unlicensed game, just play the ROM on an emulator, or if you have something like the Mega EverDrive Pro, put the ROM on that and play it that way. Then I guess it's not an issue of whether or not you think the game is worth $55. It's an issue of what your standards are for what you're willing and not willing to do. And my advice there, maybe both from a legal and a moral perspective, would be go ahead and sample it if you are not sure from watching my gameplay footage. Give it a try in emulation or with a ROM in any capacity. And then if you liked it enough, go ahead and buy either the loose cartridge or the complete game from Piko Interactive, since they're now the right party, entity, the holders of the license for this previously unlicensed game, which still isn't endorsed or authorized by Sega, but at least somebody who has the intellectual property is getting paid for it the way they're supposed to be if you buy it through Piko Interactive. And if you just keep the ROM and keep on playing it, then that's on you. I'm not judging. I think the hobby should be accessible to everyone, but I also think you should support things you like. And I took a chance with this one because I was ordering several different things from Piko Interactive at the same time, lumping together the shipping and splitting it up into payments. And I decided a new Sega Genesis game in 2022 was not a bad thing. Although I think I've had it for a little longer than that, and I'm just now getting around to playing it. But as of the filming of this video, it's new to me right here, right now, regardless of what day I ordered it. This is my first time playing it, and my first impressions are, it's good. There are some wacky things. I will say that, though, like the seemingly random amounts that you get for points when you take stuff out of the barrels, like 780 points. Why that specific amount? Why not 500 or 1,000 or 250 or 100? Why 780? That makes me think it's one of those lucky number things like 4, 5, 6. You know, it just, sometimes you see those crop up in different territories where the words that make up the numbers actually form a lucky word. So maybe 780 has some local significance in terms of how you would pronounce it. It's like 7,650 in certain Namco games, because I know that was like a pun on Namco in some way. So I don't mind it. It's just, it's odd. You can feel the not for Western audience-ness of this pretty much all the way through, but that actually makes it more appealing in its own roundabout way, because if you're going to spend the money to buy a new Sega Genesis game, you don't just want to buy another same old whatchamacallit. You know, you just want something that feels original and different. And this feels different enough. Just the cutscenes alone with their lore. Obviously, they're not voiced, which was pretty hard to do if you didn't have something on CD. You know, back then, memory limitations on cartridge were pretty severe, so I didn't expect voice acting or anything, but the fact there are cutscenes with exposition, dialogue explaining what's happening to these people as they fight their way through, I think that's a nice touch. And obviously they had to localize that into English, and I didn't see any glaring errors in the process of doing it. As Retro Megabit said, this is like Golden Axe except set in feudal China, and I think that's a pretty good explanation. I would defer to them on that respect. I would say this is very much a Golden Axe game, although I think it actually might be a little easier to control than Golden Axe, because it feels like I can actually attack at range, whereas in Golden Axe, I always feel like unless I'm right on top of the character I'm fighting, I am not locking up any damage with their hitbox. This one, you can actually stand back a little and attack them as they're coming at you. You can even corner them off at the edge of the screen and wait for their hitbox to come into range and attack them. It's very much like Double Dragon in that respect, where you can attack enemies that aren't even on the screen, or you can lure them into a position that's advantageous for you and disadvantageous for them. So this is my style of beat 'em up, and I very much appreciate what Water Margin has to offer. 40 to 60 bucks may seem like a steep price, but I don't regret it one bit.